We have it on internet, so it is streamed, so they have the choice to follow it. So good morning, everyone. I will be very quick. Just I would like to introduce you to Professor D.Angrist. He's professor at the Department of Economics at the MIT. For us, it's a really pleasure to have you here today. He's going to present us two papers. The first one is about accountability and flexibility in public schools. And the second one is about the effect of charter schools. In fact, it's deepening on the conclusions on the first about the first paper, deepening a little bit more on the long-run effects of those students who go to attend to charter schools. One of the papers has been already published in Quarterly Journal of Economics. In fact, Professor Angrist usually published in very top ranked journals such as American Economic Review, Econometrica, or Quarterly of Journal Economics. And he's also the author of a very well-known book, mostly harmless econometrics, which I think it has been very useful for all the researchers that work on the social area, that devote their efforts to analyze fields such as education. So one of the papers, the first one that he's going to talk us about, also tackles the issue of the program of no excuses, a very well-known program in the US that has had a lot of success, and about which we have done this small bulletin of 4 pages that you can read it. He's going also to talk a little to mention us one thing that he would like to add about this bulletin. So just let me thank you again for coming all the way from the US here to Spain. So I think it will be very interesting for us to get to know very rigorous analysis and studies about the education. So whenever you want, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be back in Madrid. I've visited here a few times. I always enjoy my time here. In fact, the book Ismail mentioned, Mostly Harmless Econometrics, I had a quiet summer here 5 years ago, and I was able to finish the book, actually, because there was really nothing else to do in Madrid in August. So I'm working on another book, and I think I'll be back soon. The work I'm talking about today is part of an ongoing research agenda that I'm doing with my colleagues, Parag Pathak at MIT, Sue Dynarski at Michigan, who's my former student, and a couple of our grad students, Chris Walters, who's now at Berkeley, and Sarah Cohodes at Harvard. We have an organization called the School Effectiveness and Inequality Initiative, and we do a combination of empirical research, but we're also involved in policy. For example, we did a presentation yesterday at the Boston Foundation, which is a very active charity organization in Boston that's involved with education reform. We also work on school assignment, the mechanisms by which children are matched to schools. In the United States, that's increasingly a problem solved by economists. This is what Al Roth got the Nobel Prize for, matching markets in medicine and education. So I'm showing you a small piece of what we've been doing. I'm going to kind of jump in the middle, but I'll show you some of the earlier work as well. One of the published papers, as Ismail mentioned, from the QJE a few years ago. But mostly I want to show you new stuff. We have some new results on longer-term outcomes. Our early results were on test scores. Many people wonder whether test scores are the most relevant outcome. So we would like to link it to something that's connected with longer-term human capital and labor market success. So that's the title of the talk. The Stand and Deliver study is our study of longer-term outcomes. Let me start by giving you some background. Charter schools in the United States are a relatively recent intervention. I just learned from Ishmael that the concept in Spain, the concertados, actually seems to predate charter schools in Massachusetts, and you've had that for quite a while. We got charter schools in Massachusetts. It's a state-level thing, so each state makes its own policy on this in the United States. Education is very local and decentralized. Massachusetts passed a major education reform bill in 1995, allowing public funding of essentially privately managed schools. And the way that charter schools work is they're funded by the host district. So, for example, in general in the United States, schools are funded locally. So the town you live in runs a school district. They fund it by collecting property taxes. So the value of your house is assessed, and then some proportion of the value of your house is taken every year in property taxes, and that mostly pays for your schools. It also pays for police and fire and a few other local services, but the big one is schools. So it's a public sector thing at the municipal level. Most teachers are public employees, members of public sector unions, which is the last strong collectively bargained sector in the United States. The charters operate outside that framework. Anybody who wants to can open a charter school. Some of the schools are themed, perhaps built around language or science. Many of the charter schools in our sample are focused on college preparation, sending their graduates to college. That's the hope. And they're controversial for two main reasons. One is the way they're funded. So they take money from the host district. So for example, if I were to open a charter school in Cambridge where MIT is located, some people think of MIT as in Boston, but it's actually in a separate town, the city of Cambridge, and Cambridge runs a school system. For every Cambridge resident that I enroll in my charter school, the city of Cambridge has to pay me. They pay me their average per pupil expenditure. And I have to make do with that. So I'm getting public money. The host district is losing that money, so they're not very happy about that. Of course, that's one child fewer that they have to educate, but the marginal cost of that is probably much lower than the average cost, and they're losing the average cost. The other reason that charter schools are controversial is because unlike the regular teachers, the regular school district where the teachers are almost all members of the teachers union, charter school teachers tend to be non-union. They're almost universally non-union. So their pay and their employment and their working conditions are outside the local collective bargaining agreements, which means effectively they can be hired and fired at will, pretty much as the private sector labor market operates in the United States. Teachers in charter schools also need not be certified. They don't have to have a teaching certificate, whereas in the state sector, in the regular public sector, you should have a teacher's license or something like that. The charters can hire whoever they want. The last key feature of the charter concept is that there's some level of accountability that you don't see in the in the regular traditional districts. Charters, it's sort of like getting a grant in academia. You have to apply. The charter itself is the right to operate a public school. So the charter is granted for a limited time, usually 5 years, and then you can lose your charter. You can either lose your charter at the end of the period because it's not renewed, or because you did something bad along the way and they close you down. So there's a level of accountability which is not there in the regular district school. In the regular district schools, it's very unusual to close schools. Even empty schools in Boston are not closed for the most part. The workers who work there continue to be employed. So we're interested in whether that's turned out to be effective, and we've done a lot of research on that. And a sort of unifying feature of our work is We're mostly interested in whether charter attendance benefits the children who go there. So the children who have the opportunity to go to charter schools, are they doing better in life than they otherwise would have? You could imagine a similar study, and I hope we'll see it someday soon, in Spain, comparing children who go to concertados with children who go to traditional public schools. The key thing, though, from our point of view, is just comparing the charter kids and the non-charter kids would not be very informative, because the charter kids are different. The parents choose to send them to charter schools. The schools are not randomly distributed in the city. There's all sorts of things that are special about these schools. We can solve the problem of incompatibility, the fact that the charter kids are not directly comparable to the non-charter kids, by using a feature of the Massachusetts charter law which requires oversubscribed charter schools to allocate their seats by lottery. In other words, if a charter school has more applicants than seats, they're not allowed to choose the children on the basis of an exam or an interview. They simply randomize. They draw numbers out of a hat. And in fact, that's often how they do it. They put numbers in a hat, and they have a public event. There's a movie about this called Waiting for Superman that describes this process in a kind of Hollywood way. There's some drama to it. From a research point of view, it's an ideal scenario because it moves us very close to a clinical trial. The children who apply to charter schools are not necessarily similar to the children who don't apply to charter schools, but conditional on application, the children who are offered seats are just like the children who are not offered seats, because that's done randomly. That's done by random assignment, okay, in these lotteries. Now, there's some details to be cleaned up there, and I'll show you a little bit of the flavor of the methodology. We need the magic of econometrics to adjust for the fact that not everybody who's offered a seat goes to a charter school. And some of the kids who are not offered the seats in a given lottery find their way into charter school later. So there's an adjustment there that requires some econometrics. Anyway, we've used that method to study charter schools in 3 settings. Our original study was in Boston. Then we have a study at a KIPP school in Lynn. KIPP is an acronym for a charter management organization. There are now franchises like Kentucky Fried Chicken. There are charter franchises that operate schools around the country along consistent lines. KIPP is one of the most successful franchises with over 100 campuses around the United States. The only KIPP school in New England until recently was a school in a suburb of Boston, Lynn, Massachusetts, a working class suburb, and we studied KIPP Lynn. Then we collected data from charters all around Massachusetts, which includes charters in urban districts like Boston, Springfield, Fall River, some of these poor industrial towns, and then some more suburban districts. We get a very consistent picture comes out of that, and I'll show you some of this, but it's not one-sided, okay? Boston charters generate very impressive score gains, and as I'll show you this morning, impressive gains on other outcomes as well. KIPP is also producing dramatic gains for their students. Around Massachusetts, charters are a mixed bag. Urban charters that serve high-poverty students, mostly non-white students who have low family incomes, tend to do very well. A lot of charters outside the urban core don't do very well. Some of them are actually bad. Some of them are bad in the sense that they make their students achieve less than they otherwise would have. The treatment effect, as we call it, is actually negative. And our interpretation of those findings is, and this relates to the material that you have here on sin excuses, that model seems to work very well. That model particularly works well for low-income children in high-poverty neighborhoods. The other charter models that are being explored have mostly been ineffective, at least as far as achievement goes.